Good morning. Good morning. I hope you are having a beautiful Wednesday. We have had a huge surge of new members join the group, and so I wanted to come on live and just chat with you for a little bit and kind of explain what's different here. And I don't claim to be unique to everybody out there, but the majority of sort of parenting advice or even sometimes therapists' advice, um, schools' advice, things like that. And there's a really important reason for it, and it is entirely science-based. My personal opinion happens to align as well, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it is all science-based. And so what I was referencing, that I'm not, unique in that particular perspective, is that there are neuroscientists, there are psychologists, there are doctors, there's a whole group of people who are trying to make sure that more people understand these concepts. But it's still considered kind of fringe, which is interesting to me. So, Ship parenting started about 6 years ago, and it started because I knew that I wanted to parent differently, and I did not know what that would look like. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Now I'm just grateful for this entire journey, but it was a lot. Okay, so I got my degree in education, taught elementary, and then got further certified in early childhood and taught little teeny people, and I just adore them. From there, I took trauma-informed care classes and things like that. So what was so interesting is that there really wasn't multiple sides presented. There was only the behaviorist side. And the behaviorist side, to summarize in layperson language, is that a child is just a blank slate and you can apply whatever forces you want to it to mold it to your will. And it kind of has that vibe. It's a very it kind of vibe. Like, the child's not a person, but like needs and feelings and experiences and expressions and human emotions. They're just there to be created at your whim. And that feels kind of gross to me. Like, I had my children and I looked at them and they were like a whole person. They had experiences all their own and very different experiences. Even from birth, you could see that when a baby felt secure and their nervous system wasn't taxed, they could be really calm. They could sleep and eat and play and just be really chill. And then you have a different kid, or I had a different kid, whose nervous system was not calm. And they would scream and cry for hours and hours and hours. And most people don't attempt to use any kind of behaviorism on a baby, the punishment, reward, carrot and stick, that kind of thing. But then something changes, and I believe it's language for most people. I think that once children can speak in sentences, something in our brain recognizes them and assumes that they now have like full cognition, full control. And so therefore, if they do something we don't like, they must be doing it willfully. They must be doing it intentionally. They must be doing it because they haven't learned it's bad, or that they are not fearful enough, or whatever the stories are that were created in our childhood. We have these ideas about our children. And what more recent neuroscience has taught us is that the brain's not done developing, for one. For two, our nervous system is always scanning for danger, which makes sense, seeing as our brain is supposed to like keep us safe, right? But this process of neuroception, of scanning your environment for threat to make sure that you're secure, can be very fine-tuned in some children. And some things can set it off that you wouldn't expect. Things like food dyes, things like food allergens or intolerances, things like allergies to the outside, things like phobias, things like anxiety, or the person that you think is totally normal and fine just gives your kid kind of a weird vibe. They're people. They perceive these things, they feel these things, and their nervous system sends those signals to their body. So if their nervous system is like, don't feel safe, then their behavior is going to represent that level of stress internally. And then we, from the behaviorism that we were raised in, want to figure out what can I do to them to make them not feel that way. Some of us do that from a place of, how can I distract them? How can I, bribe them? Some of us do that from a place of, how do I punish it out of them? And all of it's kind of missing the point that you are not going to get rid of internal human experience. That's universal. That's all of us. In most cases, it might elicit a short-term mask where that behavior gets pushed under for as long as the child can manage, which is usually pretty short, like 30 seconds short. And then it comes back, and it might come back with a slight tweak, or it might come back exactly the same. And you're going, what in the actual heck, right? Like, we just did this. They don't have the ability to not have feelings, nor should they. They're people. We all are supposed to have feelings. Now, if you were raised in a home where feelings weren't allowed or valued or understood, you might genuinely think that feelings mean something is wrong. Like, this is a problem. And I encourage you to sit with that. If every single human on the planet has feelings, why would that be pathological? Kids get mad. Kids get sad. Kids get frustrated. Kids get annoyed. Kids get impatient. Now replace kids with adults, because we all do it. So when we encounter these things and we're like, oh, okay, you're a human having an experience. This experience happens to be frustration. And since you are 4, and your ability to control your impulses, and your ability to initiate new activity, and your ability to think through, well, if I do this, then this might happen, and then this might happen, and then this might happen. All of that is at a 4-year-old level, not a 30-year-old level, right? So we're going to expect that you're going to melt down, that you're going to scream, that you're going to try to hit something, because you're a human. And that's what humans do, particularly very immature humans. And so the behaviorist model is that if they do something you don't like, you punish it out of them. The problem is it's not teaching them new skills. So if you have a 4-year-old who's trying to hit you and you hit them back, you're showing them, for one, that adults hit people when they're angry. So probably the opposite of what your goal was. For 2, they don't know what to do with that feeling. The only reason they hit in the first place is because their body was overwhelmed. They did not have the ability to stop themselves. So in that case, I'm going to use my adult brain and my adult body and stop them for them. Yeah, I'm not going to let you hit me. I know you're really, really mad. That's okay. You can be mad. I'm not going to let you hit me. I'm not going to let you hit me. And sometimes that's way too many words for a kid. Some kids don't want words. You can do that entire thing non-verbally. Yep. Yeah. I apparently can't, because at least a little bit of verbal slips out for me, but largely non-verbally. You can, it depends on the kid. Everything depends on the kid, right? So anybody who's had multiple kids, or who has had their own children and babysat, or had their own kids and hung out with kind of friends, all kids are different, right? All of them, they all are different. And that's one of the big things that behaviorism misses as well, is that they treat kids all the same, right? In school, it's this color chart. Oh, you're talking, change your color. Oh, you're, dancing on your chair, change your color. You're cutting up the wrong paper, change your color. And it's this instant same response to all kids. And yet all of those kids are doing things for different reasons. The kid who's cutting the wrong paper might have an auditory processing thing, which could be from ADHD. It could be from different things. It could just be because the classroom is loud. Trying to discern voices in a loud environment is difficult. It could be that they had a really creative idea and they wanted to try it their way. The kid that's rocking back in their chair probably has sensory needs. They probably, in their body, feel most secure when they can get proprioceptive input or vestibular input, if they're spinning their chair around. we sort of pretend like those things don't exist in most schools, in most classrooms. We're just like, yeah, but just deal with it. These are 6-year-olds. They can't just deal with it. And or the other argument is they are dealing with it by rocking in their chair, right? So rather than, and what was the first one talking? ADHD, every single year, my entire school career, she's a good student, but she talks too much. Yeah, we had to move her again because she talks too much. She really talks a lot. She talks too much, just constantly. Well, you know what? I grew up and got a job where I literally am paid to talk, so it worked out. But what wasn't understood is that talking was how I was regulating. That talking was my social connection, my social outreach, and not just for like funsies, but to feel neurologically safe. It wasn't viewed in a positive light. It wasn't viewed as adaptive. It was viewed as disruptive. And what I want more than anything is for us to look at the kid and believe with all of our hearts, this kid is doing the best they can right now, with the brain they have, with the development they have, with the circumstances they have, and with the felt safety that they have. So if one of those is out of whack, they're going to be out of whack. That's not a threat. That is not a failure. That's just life. And it's true for us too. When I'm hormonal and I get really bad news, I am grumpy to everyone. Not because I'm a mean person, not because I don't know better, but because I'm a human with feelings. We cannot expect higher standards from our tiny humans than we expect from ourselves. Almost universally, parents have kind of a built-in acceptance of like, well, yeah, like I was really rude and grumpy, but so I'm the parent. Does that make sense? Now, if your reason for accepting it is I'm human and humans have feelings, agreed. You don't need to beat yourself up. We're all people doing the best we can. But that also applies to your kids. That applies to all kids. And when we look at a child as doing the best they can, and we look at them as trying to experience safety, then we look at their behaviors differently, right? There was a 4-year-old that was talked about earlier in the group, and they talked about, they wouldn't sit in timeout. Of course they won't. That doesn't feel safe to their body. They feel isolated and shamed and rejected. And again, it doesn't teach anything. It does not teach your kid any new skills so that they can do better next time. It creates this extra stress in their body so that they have more behavior later, which is exemplified in the post when you see the escalation, right? Okay, well, I can't do time in because she's grabbing my face. Exactly. She wants to connect with you. Time in isn't meant to be time out next to you. It's meant to be, you're having a really hard time. Let's connect. Let's regulate. Now, it sounds like this particular kiddo is a really physical kiddo. Awesome. Let's connect and let's regulate in a really physical way. One of my kids' favorites is sumo pushes. So we lock arms like this and we push back and forth. So, like this is the image they have. And we push and we push and we push. And their favorite currently is if I have socks on and we're in the kitchen, because then they can push me across the tiles and they think it's hilarious and they feel like strong men and yay. But even my 2-year-old, almost 3, she's like, pushes? You do pushes? I'm like, sure, we can do pushes. And she'll push with all of her little might. And it's really cool because what happens when our nervous system feels really overloaded is that our brain throws us into fight mode, right? Which is adrenaline, which is cortisol, which is norepinephrine, and all of these hormones and chemicals in our bloodstream that are gearing us up. So we're buzzing with this energy of fight and defend yourself and protect yourself. They can't stop that from happening. So they need to do something with that energy. And what they're literally being primed to do is to fight. It's to punch, kick, yell, scream, throw, break. That's the energy. That's the purpose of it. So when they do that, it's not particularly shocking. That's what their brain told them to do. And us just being angry about it doesn't change the physiological process. It adds a whole extra layer of confusion. But my entire body is buzzing with this horrible, awful energy that needs to get out. I hate this feeling. It's scaring me. It's freaking me out. It's outside of my control. What the heck am I supposed to do? And that's the question we get to answer. largely with our modeling, what do we do with that anger and frustration? I will tell my kids, I need a minute. I'm starting to feel really frustrated, right? I think in my really frustrated, like all the way on, I think I said to my kids recently, I am probably going to scream. You need to give me a minute. Something like that. But I'm verbalizing how I'm feeling, right? Is it proper? I don't know. Does it matter? What I'm communicating to them in that moment and what they feel from me in that moment is mom is really close to losing her cool, and she's kind of giving us a heads up, not to threaten them to bend their will to mine, but to let them know, like, I need a second. Does it always work? Absolutely not. But does it a lot of times? Actually, yeah, it actually does. Because, and by work, I mean, do they then kind of back off a little bit? A lot of times they do. And if particularly my youngest is actually scared, it won't work. She'll fling herself into me and hug me. Why? Because she feels nervous. And who does she go to when she feels nervous? Me. Which almost always flips a switch in my head. And I'm like, all right, I'll be mad about the gate later. Yesterday was the gate. The gate was traffic. Right? Crazy. But so when they're angry and they say, go away, I'm like, good insight. You need space. Cool. Now, it depends on the kid, depends on the age, right? My 7-year-old says go away. He actually means he wants some space, like away from humans, and he's old enough to determine that. When my 2-year-old says it, she doesn't. She's a freak out as soon as I walk away. So for her, the approach is different. Different kids, different ages, different stages of development. She's copying what brother says. What she actually means is, I feel really overwhelmed and freaked out, and I don't like this feeling. Cool. I'm going to sit right here. I don't have to touch you. I don't have to get close to you, but I'm here. And I will be here as soon as you are ready to approach. She's screaming and flipping out. And sometimes she'll come at me like this, and I'll just catch her hand. I'm not going to let you hit me. You're mad, though. You're really mad. You can hit the couch. I'm usually sitting on the couch or by the couch. If you can get at or below eye level, you become less threat to their nervous system, right? It's fantastic. And what happens is she sees me regulating. If I'm actually annoyed in this situation, I might start tapping and breathing. And what happens is that my body is going from escalated to calm. And the mirror neurons in her body are watching that process and taking notes and learning what it looks like to go from escalated to calm. That's how we learn that process. We learn to self-regulate by co-regulating thousands of times, regulating with our calm parent, regulating with our adult who knows that we're not doing this to be a monster. We're doing this because we're little and overwhelmed and we need help. So when we start thinking in behaviorist terms of how do I make my kid, we're setting ourselves up for failure. When we start looking at the situation in terms of how do I help my kid? And again, this isn't help them to not have feelings, right? It's to utilize this entire situation as an opportunity to develop self-regulation skills, to develop emotional intelligence, to develop coping strategies for hard feelings, right? Kids are going to have feelings. They have to. That's a human thing. Some kids have much bigger feelings than other kids, largely because the kids that are more physical, it's very obvious that they're having those feelings. Whereas the kids who are not as physical, their big feelings show up differently. And every once in a while, I actually run into a parent who finds the physical feelings super easy and the deep emotional feelings way harder. But usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the physical feelings that have us all pulling our hair out. And people balk when I'm like, yeah, that's normal. They're like, no, my kid won't ever. But they will, because they're human. You made a human, not a robot. So you get a human, not a robot. And the people who promote various forms of behaviorism, they really like to have this image of a silver bullet of, just do this to them over and over and over again until you break their will or until they obey you. And they're missing so much opportunity to create a secure relationship, to create a sense of understanding between them and their kid, to create an environment where their kid actually knows what to do instead of, I better just hide this from my mom and dad. They can't handle it. I don't know how to handle it, but I know I better hide. That's not the goal. Not in my book, not in this group. For us, the goal is relationship first and modeling all of the skills that we need them to learn to grow up into that competent adult that we envision, to model that with them every day to the best of our ability, because we get to be human too, and to trust development, to trust that just because your 4-year-old throws something when they're mad does not mean that they're going to throw things when they're 36, though they might, depending on the person. However, that was a reference to myself. Although I don't throw things anymore, I don't think. I did when I was a teenager. Never in front of my parents. They had no idea the amount of inner pain and rage and suffering that I experienced. They had no idea because I couldn't trust them with that. And I couldn't trust them with that because their version of what good parenting looked like was to have a docile child. And so they did whatever they thought was appropriate to control me. And I'm a very sensitive person. So it doesn't take a lot for me to go, oh yeah, I can't trust you and I'm not going to share that with you. They didn't know I was having panic attacks from the time I was 12. They didn't know. I couldn't share that with them. I couldn't share very real medical things that I was going through because that was considered bad behavior. So I just kept it to myself. And a lot of kids will do that. They'll flip from outside behaviors to inside behaviors, from externalizing to internalizing. And we'll think as parents, we've done our job. They might still be trying to heal that 15 years later. It's not worth the trade-off. You didn't become a parent to make your life easier. But parenting is hard. So, who on earth said that you can't do hard things? In my book, doing the hard things is what makes life worthwhile. And it's certainly what makes parenting worthwhile. When you know I am creating the environment for your body and brain to feel safe, to develop ideally, to experience life at its fullest. That's worth doing hard things. I'm creating a safe childhood for you so that you don't have CPTSD and an anxiety disorder and trauma to deal with when you're 30. That's worth hard things. I am learning what triggers the hell out of me so that I can fix it and grow past my wounds and my pain points so I can show up better for you. That's worth hard things. Right? And so, can behaviorism work? Well, yeah, to a degree, especially with small stake stuff, right? Like, can you, I don't know, get your kid to clean up if you threaten to take away their video games? Yeah, probably, most of the time. But are they learning that cleaning up is part of their family, part of taking care of their home, part of experiencing what tidiness feels like and how good that feels? Or are they building resentment and anger and rage towards cleaning? Like me. And when you have a family culture of working together, you can hear my kids got up. How is that different? How does it feel different in your bodies and theirs? Is it harder in some ways because you can't just shout commands? Sure. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. Hard doesn't mean bad. In fact, in lots of situations, the harder path is the better path, right? It's easier to cheat. It's easier to steal the answers to the exam before you take it. Doesn't mean it's right, right? It is harder to study and research for years and much easier to stick your head in the sand and be like, meh, I know enough. And maybe you do, right? Maybe you are the exception and you're just here to be in a group in case you need this support, and your family was respectful and empathic and really viewed children as whole people, focused on relation. Like, that's fantastic. I'm not trying to denounce that that exists, but it is rare that that happens. Most people, all of my clients, in fact, have had experiences that they don't want repeated in their child's childhood. So that is who I typically speak to. It's not that other people don't exist. And it doesn't take perfection to create secure attachment. Let's make that abundantly clear. These are the ideals that we strive for. That does not mean you're not going to lose your cool. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be a jerk some days. It doesn't mean that your nervous system isn't going to get overwhelmed and slip out of your control sometimes. It means that we aim high so that when we slip up, we're not causing irreparable damage. We're going, oh yeah, I didn't show up as my best self. Let's repair that. And you handle it. And that repair actually adds to your secure attachment, right? So there's a lot of content in this video. We're already at 26 minutes. I know it's long, and it's still not at all of it. If you want kind of a more overarching view, I did write backwards this book, Sure Parenting: The Building Blocks to Create Their Best Childhood. In this book, there are literally building blocks. They look like these. Okay. So these are the top level is the goals that we want for our kids, how we need to parent to reach them, what we need to parent that way, how we develop those skills, and then the key to all of it. Okay. And then each chapter is one of the building blocks. So that book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble online, bit.ly/Sure Parenting book. Also on my website, there's links to the book, the audiobook. The link to the book is also the link to the Kindle version. And then there's there's a journal that I created for parents called Discovering the Sure Parent Within, with 52 prompts. So you can do like one a week to just think about, what are your goals? What are the things that you are working on? What are your struggles? What kind of relationship do you want with your children? What is holding you back? Just lots of questions that I ask clients. You get to do that work yourself if you would like. And I recommend it. I think that being able to sit down and really consider what your goals even are is going to empower you to reach them. If you have no idea what your goals are, that makes it a little tricky. And if your goals are misaligned with development, that makes it tricky. My goal is to have children that have no feelings. Well, that's not going to happen. So sorry to disappoint. But my goal is for my kids to learn emotional intelligence and know how to handle big feelings. Cool. That can happen. My goal is to have a secure relationship with my child. Awesome. That can definitely happen. My goal is to repair damage that I've already done. Cool. We can do that. My goal is for them to have a different childhood than I had. Absolutely. Right there with you. Right. And it's not about, I want to add here at the end, it's not about hating your parents or blaming your parents. It's about being really clear about what you want to pull from your childhood as a positive and include in your child's childhood, like summers outside or going camping or, something that is positive. And what you don't. I'm not going to have my kids be terrified when I come home. That's not a goal I have for them ever. And those goals, that insight to myself, help me to mold my parenting from the uniqueness that is me. And then knowing my children and knowing their unique brains helps me to mold my parenting from the uniqueness that is them. So the U in SURE stands for unique, because we are literally all unique and we have all different needs, all different brain types, something we talk about all the time in various classes and one-on-one work and group work. And it makes a huge difference in how you approach your kid. Don't be afraid of it. Get to know them. Lean in to the challenge, lean into getting to know your kid, lean into trust, lean into development, lean into knowing that they are doing their best and we can set them up for more and more success. That's our goal. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. We're at about a half hour. Kids need breakfast, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.